We're streaming live. Yep, we are live on YouTube also. We're going to put that there. If you're on YouTube, I'm taking comments. I like to go live on my YouTube. Hopefully everything, it says we're live there. And then I'm going to start sharing to our groups that we can share to. This is a good one. This is a good podcast tonight, everybody. We are going to be talking about the Buffalo Trace line, the Buffalo Trace Distillery, the master distillers, and then also the experience of going to Buffalo Trace. We've been down there 3-4 times for tours, and then at least 5-6 times stopping in at the gift shop. A lot of different things I will talk about, but let me get this saved quickly to our groups. You know, it's like I have no idea. Sometimes this works really good, and then other times, I don't know. Well, tonight we are talking everything Buffalo Trace. I'm going to get this saved to the groups and then check it out, and then we'll get this podcast rolling, everybody. Welcome. I should actually bring the microphone up and make sure it is. So I've got that microphone going. Slide this down, get this microphone into its position. So we've got both mics going. I did want that microphone, but so let's go for here. All right, keep sharing. There's one thing I wanted to talk about while I'm sharing is this weekend is New Orleans Whiskey Festival. A lot of people are headed down. That's really kind of cool. I think that the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, we went to the Galena Whiskey Festival, and I think we are going to be making, conscious decision to be going down to New Orleans next year. So that'll be a great place to meet up with the Scotchy Bourbon Boys and meet myself, Tiny, Super Nash. Hopefully we'll be there along with, now that we're making that, along with CT. CT's been awesome. He has been going with us to pretty much, he went to a Galena Whiskey Festival. He's been came down for Kentucky Bourbon Festival. And again, Kentucky Bourbon Festival is the third weekend of this year. I think it's the 14th through the 17th, starting that Thursday night with Bourbon in the Air. One of the coolest, I think, one of the best whiskey events there is. Awesome. But let me just keep going. We are going to be talking about, and then you got Bourbon on the Banks, which Bourbon on the Banks is in Frankfort, right next to the Buffalo Trace Distillery. So that's a really good one to get down. We will be going there. You can check us out there also. All right. Weller Fanboys. This one is a good one because I can actually save it to all the Buffalo Trace. And they're still not kicking me out. So I don't know what Buffalo Trace had today. I hope you guys got something. I know that some exciting things are going to be happening already. And we are going to talk about Buffalo Trace tonight. And there's a lot to talk about. Their marketing is unique. Probably some of the best navigated marketing, honestly, for bourbon and whiskey. And we'll talk about that. Then along with, we're going to be talking about the line, which the line is insane, but then also the history of Buffalo Trace and stories that we have heard. It's great getting in now that we're entering into seriously being into this for 5 straight years. That's really something that I find exciting. What would you do? I would say it's exciting. So we've gotten stories from distillers, and we've talked to Harlan Wheatley directly, and then also Greg Schneider, who knew while he was working for Wild Turkey and while he was working for Jim Beam, knew Elmer T. Lee, and then he also knew Harlan when he was young. One of the reasons why I was able to actually do the podcast with Harlan the first time is because Greg helped me out to get Harlan onto the podcast. So there's a lot of history and love for Buffalo Trace in my bourbon journey that we're going to talk about tonight. So this should be a fantastic podcast. Give me a couple seconds more, because right now we're getting to the end. As soon as I see my high school class, I know I'm really getting to the area. Okay, so we've shared it to the groups, and we've got some people watching live, which is great. Welcome. Tonight we are talking Buffalo Trace. One of the things. Now, I am going to be monitoring comments, so during this... Here we go, taking this... Oh, gosh. All right. All right, so we're back up here. We got a bunch of people watching. So if you have any questions... Okay, what just happened? Did I just do it again? Yeah, how did I actually... That's why I do this. It's great that you guys are watching tonight, everybody. We are covering the Buffalo Trace line. We are going to talk about Buffalo Trace. We are getting ready to start the podcast. Just for your information, I'm Tiny of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about Buffalo Trace is because I feel excited about what's happening at Buffalo Trace and what Sazerac has done. And we're going to go over a little bit of a history. We're going to go over the actual products that they have. I got a good amount of them represented. I'm going to drink away once we start. And then also we are going to give what you need to do to be able to go down and experience Buffalo Trace. Different times, what you can do, the different tours they have. So, with no further ado, what's going to happen first is we have what I'm going to do is we're going to get the podcast started. When I hit record, that will lead to 30 seconds of me being quiet and then into our theme song, and we'll get going. So welcome everybody to the Buffalo Trace. We are live on YouTube and Facebook, so if you have any comments throughout the podcast, I'll be monitoring that and I'll answer your questions. This is going to be a fun one. I look forward to starting this with you guys. So here we go. All right, now that irritates the living crap out of me. Let's do that again. Where is there we go. All right, we should pair, and let's try that one more time again. Thank you.
Telling the truth. Yeah, we're the Scotch
All right. Welcome back to another podcast of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. I'm Tiny. Tonight I am on my own and ready to podcast. Already, we're set up pretty good. We are live on YouTube and we are live on Facebook.
We're set up pretty good.
Okay,
We are
there we
live.
go. There's the technical thing. Got to turn that one down. A little bit of delay. Welcome to the podcast. Once again, I'm Tiny of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. You can check us out, www.scotchybourbonboys.com, for everything that is Scotchy Bourbon Boys. And then also, we are on all major podcast formats. You're talking about Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple. Check us out there. Any place that you listen to a podcast, we're there. And then also, please remember to listen, like, subscribe, leave comments, good feedback, either on the podcast or all the major social media formats. We are on Facebook. We're Facebook Live now. We're on YouTube. We are also on TikTok, Twitter, and wait. YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I only got 4. Oh, Instagram? Yeah, Instagram, we'll go with that. Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. We'll just go with that. I know I'm missing one, but usually it's 5, so I don't know what that one was about, but check us out. We do a lot of posts, a lot of reels, a lot of shorts. The podcasts are on YouTube right now. We're doing it YouTube Live. You get little special things. This Friday, which is tonight is Wednesday. Friday, whiskey's coming down, and we're gonna do 6, 7, 8 rapid tastings. It's where we both take about 10 minutes to taste one specific bourbon that you might, or rye or whiskey that you might be interested in. We try and mix it up a little bit, and we do rate it for you. So check that out on YouTube if you get a chance. Now, remember, you can make any questions, any comments while you're watching on either YouTube or Facebook. But tonight, I'm extremely excited about doing the Buffalo Trace podcast. This is everything Buffalo Trace. So that's one thing why I figured I'd get some comments. I'm probably not going to do this perfect, but let's see what we're going to do. Let's start with a little bit of history. Buffalo Trace, the distillery, has been around for a long, long time. It's basically, you're talking about the Buffalo Trace. It's built on a buffalo pass where all the buffaloes came down to the rivers and then passed through. That was first named for that during Daniel Boone's time in 1771. Then it was Frankfurt was surveyed in 1773, and in 1775 Leestown was formed by Hancock and Willis Lee. That's Leestown north of Frankfurt. Then in 1792, Kentucky became the 15th state in the Union. And then also Richard Taylor builds the old Taylor House, which still exists on the site today. So that's kind of a good thing. When you go down to Buffalo Trace, you can check out the old Taylor House. When we went down in 2019, we took the tour. There was a haunted tour, a nighttime tour of the distillery. And when we went down there, it started out in the old Taylor House, which is right there on the property. The property is spectacular, well kept. It is a historical landmark. So when you go down there, it's almost in itself, you get the tours, but you get to walk the grounds and go see where the river is. And I mean, it's just a beautiful place. You could spend easily a whole day at the distillery and the grounds. So in 1811, a 3-story stone warehouse is built on the Kentucky River near Riverside to store goods. And in there, there's many barrels of whiskey that were stored there. And Benjamin Harris Blanton is said to distill on site in the upcoming years. Then, in 1858, but a small but up-to-date distillery is developed by Daniel Swigert using warehouse and riverside site. Then in 1870, Colonel Edmund Haynes Taylor Jr. purchases the distillery and christens it the OFC, Old Fire Copper, in reference to the belief that the finest whiskey was produced in old-fashioned wood-fired copper stills. Then in 1872, he invests $70,000, a small fortune, as he builds a new distillery on the site. 1878, the Old Fire Copper Distillery is purchased by George T. Stagg. So you could already see part of the lineup that's happening, through the history. You've got Colonel Taylor building that first distillery there, and then Stagg, putting it there. And also that distillery that E.H. Taylor built was let's see. So he basically, Stagg purchased it. And then in 1881, Warehouse A, Warehouse B are built, and they're still standing today. And then in 1882, the lightning strikes, and the OFC distillery, the Great Fire, burns, and then it's rebuilt immediately in a grander manner at a cost of $44,000 over and above the insurance collected. The newly rebuilt distillery included a large mashing and fermenting wing, which remains intact today as the Dickel Building. Then, in 1885, the construction of Warehouse C, it's still standing, completes Taylor's vision for his model distillery plan of the world. Then in 1886, steam heating systems for the warehouse are installed, making it the first distillery to use steam heat, which is still in use today, which is very cool. I mean, when you go in there, it's one of the reasons I believe that, that that Buffalo Trace with that steam heating allows them, they control things to some extent. So with their expansion that they're doing today, they can match that steam heating to try and replicate on so many different levels all the different atmospheres of each of the different rick houses. Then in 1897, Albert Blanton, he joins the company as an office boy at the age of 16, which is, that's crazy. But he is appointed still in 1900, which is the Gilded Age ends, and Albert B. Blanton is appointed as stillhouse, warehouse, and bottling superintendent. So in basically 3 short years, he goes from a office boy up to being the stillhouse, warehouse, and bottling superintendent. So you got to figure that Albert Blanton is kind of a special guy. Now, in 1904, the distillery is rechristened as the George T. Stagg Distillery. So, in 1919, basically Prohibition goes in, but the George T. Stagg Distillery is one of a few to receive permit to bottle medicinal whiskey, and even fewer permitted produce new whiskey from 1930 to 1933. So, they were let to produce, not only but produce the whiskey. So that was something that was really good for the George T. Stagg Distillery. And then in 1921, the Albert B. Blanton becomes the president of the George T. Stagg Distillery. The distillery is then, in 1921, George T. Stagg sells it to the Schenley Distillers Corporation. 1933, Prohibition ends, and Buffalo Trace is, or the George T. Stagg Distillery is set to basically supply the world with whiskey because so many people weren't set. So that was an advantage for the distillery. Schenley begins a massive expansion program that culminates in 1935 and 37 with a new state-of-the-art Distillery Complex. 1935, Warehouse H, the distillery's only metal-clad warehouse, is the first of 7 massive new warehouses built before World War II. Then, in 1937, the grounds flood, inundating the distillery, creating a 17 feet above power plant, 4 feet above the Warehouse H. All right, and then in 1942, the distillery produces its 1 millionth barrel of bourbon after Prohibition. Then, you got Albert Blanton still there, but in 1949, Elmer T. Lee joins the distillery. He becomes the first of the modern distillers eventually. 1953, Warehouse V, the world's only single-barrel warehouse, is built in celebration of the 2 millionth barrel of bourbon produced since Prohibition. 1984, the distillery introduces Blanton's, the world's first single-barrel bourbon. So you got a lot of time of just not nothing, but producing whiskey in Kentucky where not a lot of fantastic things are happening. Then in 1992, the distillery is finally returned to a family-owned business after purchased by the Sazerac Company. Between 92 and 99, they do renovations and complete and rechristen the distillery as the Buffalo Trace Distillery. The distillery's new flagship brand is Buffalo Trace, which right there, beautiful, beautiful bottle. This is still their flagship brand. Then in 2000, Buffalo Trace Distillery is awarded Whiskey Advocates Distillery of the Year, the first American distillery to win this prestigious international award. So there you go. They basically, you got Jim Beam going and you got Wild Turkey going, but what you're talking about is what they were doing as far as innovation to bring tourism and bring back. You had Beam Incorporated and Beam Suntory starting to do that with their small batches. Elmer T. Lee then in 2001 is inducted into the Bourbon Hall of Fame. Then in 2004, the Blanton family homestead, also known as the Beaches, is acquired by Buffalo Trace Distillery to preserve the historic home built in 1818. Then in 2005, master distiller Gary Gerhardt retires after 33 years at the distillery, and Harlan Wheatley becomes master distiller of the Buffalo Trace. This is 2005. So Harlan is still the master distiller there, and it's pretty. He's been doing some pretty amazing things, and we'll get into the renovations and everything of what he's been overseeing. To eventually, when you talk about Harlan, you are going to be talking about him in the same breath as E.H. Taylor. And I mean, it's because of what he's done as far as renovation and oversee with the Sazeracs. This is pretty amazing. 2006, the Buffalo Trace Distillery releases its first expansion collection, bourbon consisting of 3 different experiments. In 2007, E.H. Taylor Jr. Micro Still, named after the father of modern bourbon industry, is launched, a combination pot still and column still. The Micro Still allows Buffalo Trace to experiment in small batches. 2008, the distillery produces its 6 millionth barrel after Prohibition. Long time, okay. 2010, distillery is named Whiskey Magazine's Visitor Attraction of the Year. 2011, recognized Brand Innovator of the Year by Whiskey Magazine. 2013, it's deemed Buffalo Trace Distillery a National Historic Landmark. All right, so I don't think that is weird. I gotta see. Sorry, folks. That was Super Nash calling. And I had to cut that off because if Super Nash wants to talk, he should check out the podcast because I am live on Facebook. So anyways, then in 2016, the discovery of the forgotten OFC distillery named Bourbon Pompeii. They found it. The Buffalo Trace Distillery welcomes its 1 millionth visitor since 1999. It would be cool if Super Nash jumped on. And then 2007, the attraction of the year, Whiskey America, and then 2018. I mean, the accolades keep going, but present day, what they're doing right now is they've finished their expansion and then they're just going straight into another expansion. So the bourbon industry is expanding so fast, but the main thing what they did, and they just put on line just recently, is the addition of another still. Now, when I had Harlan Wheatley on in, I believe, let me think, it would have been November of 2021, because it would, okay, so Super Nash is now calling, so I'm going to accept and then put him on speaker. All right. Hello.
What's happening, bro?
I'm doing a live Facebook, YouTube, and and then also podcasting at the moment. What's happening with you?
And just got in from work, heating up dinner.
All right. Well, either you could jump on Facebook or YouTube, or you could talk a little bit, because we're just talking Buffalo Trace. We just finished up with the history, and we're going forward with what they're doing right now as far as expanding.
Actually, I'll grab a pour and I'll jump on Facebook.
There you go. I
All
figured.
right,
All right. So talk to you.
And Super Nash will podcast tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I've been trying to call you all week.
Man, we'll talk later.
All right. We'll talk later. All right. Love you, brother.
Bye.
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 So there you go. Super Nash jumps in live on our Facebook and our YouTube and the podcast. You got a little bit of Super Nash. He'll be jumping in also on, just watching on Facebook. That'll be great. Thank you, everybody who's been watching on YouTube and Facebook. So let's just get into what are they doing today. They've revamped the visitor center. They seriously have by far, in my opinion, the best gift shop there is. There might be some that are close, but what they've done at that gift shop is amazing. What they've done with their tasting rooms that lead into the gift shop. Now, I think Jim Beam, what they've recently done also is pretty damn amazing. And they, so I think they're right up there with the Beam and Jim Beam, and then also with Buffalo Trace. But what Buffalo Trace has done at that gift shop is just amazing. The merchandise that you can pick up is exactly what down there at the Buffalo Trace gift shop is exactly. I mean, honestly, if you're going to be going down to Buffalo Trace and you've planned your day, first thing you got to do is you got to get on the website and you've got to schedule their tours. Okay. So right now, and visit us, it was the 21st. So booking a tour went online for April on the 21st. Today is the 22nd, and every tour for April, as of right now, is booked. So what you got to do is May 1st through 7 dates will be available on, that was, okay, so on March 21st at 9 a.m. So May 8th through 31st dates will be available on Tuesday, April 4th. So April 4th at 9 a.m., you got to jump in there and get on the website and book a tour. Now, the tours that they have right now, they have the Old Taylor Tour, the Trace Tour, and the Hard Hat Tour. So the Old Taylor Tour takes you into the bourbon or the Pompeii, Buffalo Trace Pompeii, where they have renovated that the fermenting and cooking tanks that E.H. Taylor used originally. They had been cemented over. They basically renovated that whole thing right on the river. It's actually the part of the distillery that went in under during the flood. And also they've put in some stainless steel and a ventilation system to start fermenting E.H. Taylor's original corn strain. They found the strain of corn, that he used, and they are making what Colonel Taylor would have been making in the 1800s in that those fermenting tanks, and they're making it that mash bill, and they're barreling it, distilling it, and aging it right now. So that's really kind of something exciting, and you get to see that on the Old Taylor tour. Now that there's only, I believe, only 2 Old Taylor tours. The Trace tour is the tour that goes through. They all come with tastings afterwards in the tasting rooms, and then there's the Hard Hat tour, which takes you through all the renovations that they've gone through as far as what they're doing to expand Buffalo Trace. But you got to get on the website early. Book that for a month you're talking a month in advance. So you have your days. I mean, the weekends are tough. Friday, Saturday, Sunday to book are tough, but Monday through Thursday, those actually aren't the hardest to. Those are fairly easy to get if you're going after it and you're there at 9:00 on the specific date. So once you get down there, know that you're going to have time in the gift shop. They have the merchandise. I mean, the clothing that they have, the amount of their branding, the hats, the different type special boxes and gift sets, and then they've got different types of sauces. I mean, it's paralleled really to no other distillery. I think Heaven Hill, it's like a combination of if you took Heaven Hill's gift shop and merged it with Jim Beam's, that's where you get the amount of merchandise is just insane. So when you go down there, man, bring your wallet, get ready to really have a cool experience. Then you've got Freddie Johnson, who is a tour guide down there. His dad worked at the distillery. He is a brand ambassador, probably one of the brand ambassadors. When you're talking about Stephen Fonte, or you're talking about with Limestone, and you're talking about Bernie Lovers with Heaven Hill, you're talking about Freddie Johnson with Buffalo Trace. He's just done a fantastic job promoting the brand. But he also has his own brand of root beer and ginger ale that are fantastic. I always walk out with a couple cases of each. I enjoy the gift shop and everything. And you might, while you're walking around, see Freddie. So when we did our first tour, and we went down for the Ghost tour, it was awesome because they were in the old it was before their gift shop was revamped. And when you walked in, there was like a little bar off to the right, and you did your tasting there. So after the Ghost tour, we did our tasting. And Freddie, believe it or not, I didn't even know who he was. He led our tasting. So as I went through everything and found out more and more and more and more, it was really cool. I just got into bourbon. Okay, so there is an actual comment on YouTube. You are the first ever comment asking. So let's say this is luck for someone who's starting out. What's one you'd recommend? Well, Buffalo Trace, if you're just starting out. Now, you're lucky because lately Buffalo Trace is becoming more and more available on the shelf. Now, if you're just starting out, I strongly recommend Buffalo Trace, because we are talking about a decent, what would you say? A really, really good base bourbon. This could be used for mixing, sipping, but also now, if you're talking about a bourbon who's for someone who's just starting out, for me, the start out, and it's a little bit easier to get. I don't know when I started out, if you can get E.H. Taylor small batch, that's another one that's great for starting out. And then a little bit, I would say when you're talking about now, if you've been into bourbon like Jim Beam, regular Jim Beam, and you've been in now, There's also the Weller brand where you have the Weller Special Reserve. So check out those brands and let me know what you think as far as when you're just getting into it. There's so much more as you go further. So there you go. First comment and question ever asked on my YouTube live. So I'm excited that Luck jumped in. Thank you for asking that question. Then, so once you're down there, the grounds are spectacular. There is the one thing that they don't have yet is a restaurant. So the tastings are unbelievable. And once you're done there, you should go into Frankfurt. There's a couple really good bourbon bars and bourbon restaurants into the Frankfurt area, which is right down the street. Know that a good time to go down there is the first weekend in October. There's Bourbon on the Banks. So you're talking about a really cool bourbon festival going on. Plus, you can check out Buffalo Trace at the same time. Now, one of the things I'll just talk about here is that when I'm driving around Kentucky and I'm in the areas of this area where there's all these different distilleries, Whiskey Thief, which used to be Three Boys, there's Four Roses, there's Wild Turkey, there's Buffalo Trace, there's Woodford Reserve. All these distilleries are within a half hour of each other. I strongly suggest that if you're driving around and you got to go to the bathroom, which everybody does on road trips, don't stop at gas stations to do that. Stop at distilleries. Even if you're not going to take a tour, stop in, use the restroom. They are world-class restrooms. They're world-class clean, world-class style. Woodford Reserve has paintings in their restroom. Buffalo Trace, separate stalls for, it's just a private experience. Even Castle and Key at the old Taylor Distillery right down the road, they have some of the most fantastic bathrooms. Always think if you're driving around doing this, make sure instead of stopping off to go to the bathroom at the gas station, stop at the different distilleries, even if you don't have them booked for a tour. So I strongly suggest that. All right, so it's a great experience to go down and so many things to do. But if you're going down to Buffalo Trace for the first time, you could check out when you get there. They have special releases. They like to release E.H. Taylor. They like to release Blanton's. They like to release Weller Special Reserve, Buffalo Trace, and then I want to say E.H. Taylor, Buffalo Trace, and Weller Special Reserve. Then they also have their Old Fashioned and their Manhattan mixes, which are fantastic. And they've been releasing Sazerac Rye as of also on those days. So you're able to buy one bottle, swipe your card, your driver's license, and then every, I believe, 90 days you're allowed another. So a lot of times when you go down there, you're going to pick up a Blanton's. And everybody knows that the world goes crazy for Blanton's. So that brings me to my next part of the podcast. And when you're talking about the podcast, here we go. Buffalo Trace's marketing and their brands are insane, in my opinion. So this is something I understand that I understand all the different, what would you say? I understand Heaven Hill does a ton of brands. So does Jim Beam. But the marketing plan for Buffalo Trace. So I'm going to run through their brands right now. Buffalo Trace Bourbon. I've got it right here. It's just their signature. It started out, but I believe right now it's about $29.99 a bottle in the state of Ohio. Then you've got Eagle Rare. Now, Buffalo Trace also makes a kosher version of theirs, which is a little bit rarer. And then you've got the Eagle Rare right here. You got Eagle Rare, which is, now, this is what I wanted to do. All right. Buffalo Trace, I will get to it, I believe. Craft your own, visit us, events, our brands. I had it right here. Is that it? I wanted to go over really quick. All right, it's got in the brand. So we'll pull off Buffalo Trace bourbon. I'll just call it up. I can do this. All right. So Buffalo Trace has specific mash bills. They don't tell you what they are, but when they do it, they're not gonna. It's I should have. This is one that I wanted to. All right, Eagle Rare. If I don't get it right now, so the different versions of Eagle Rare are Double Eagle Very Rare and Eagle Rare 17-year-old, which is part of the Antique Collection. And all right, I'll just do a real quick search. Just hold on with me. Buffalo. They actually have online pictures of their mash bill chart. There it is. All right, there it is. I'm calling it up. That's a bad one. Okay. Alright, why is it such crappy? I'm trying, guys. Just hang in there. Really? I get this. Okay, here we go. So they have Mash Bill 1, which is a low. So I got into an argument one time. High rye, low rye. So the Mash Bill 1, which is a lower rye mash bill. They don't give you things. These are their brands: Colonel Taylor, George T. Stagg, Eagle Rare, Stagg Jr., Buffalo Trace, and Benchmark, along with Old Charter. Now, their mash bill 2 is Ancient Age, which is a high rise, Elmer T. Lee, and Blanton's. Then they have a wheated mash bill, which is William LaRue Weller, and then all the Wellers, along with the Pappy Van Winkles. So their wheated mash bill is Weller Special Reserve 107. It is the William LaRue Weller. And then they have a rye mash bill, which is their fourth one. And their rye mash bill is Sazerac, Tom Handy, and let's see. I tried. That didn't work. Let's see if I can. I can't magnify it up. Can I? I'm trying. Okay. Sazerac, which is rye in the antique, and then also Thomas Handy. So there's the different mash bills. That's really kind of cool. There's also in that high rye mash bill is Rock Hill Farms and Hancock Reserve. So one kind of cool thing lately is that Rock Hill Farms is starting to show up in a lot of different places, and and Hancock President Reserve. I mean, and then also Old Charter, which is aged 8 years. They're made with the same mash bills, but they're not as sought after as the other Buffalo Trace products. Now, the other Buffalo Trace products, let's talk about those. Now, I'm going to go back. I have the mash bills, so at least I was able to. Nobody knows the exact. Some people estimate what those mash bills are, but choke on my own. Here we go. We're going back. Not that. All right. So we came up with so here's the quick with the brands. Buffalo Trace Eagle Rare, which has Double Eagle Very Rare and Eagle Rare 17-year-old. Their antique collection. Now their antique collection consists of Sazerac Rye 18, William LaRue Weller, Thomas H. Handy, and Eagle Rare 17 years. Now the Old Fire Copper vintages, that is something that is so rare. They just released one this year, and it's just unbelievable. It's so rare. I haven't even tried it yet, folks, but I would like to try their OFC. I went in for the lottery, and I did not win in the state of, I think there was one bottle. Now, their experimental collections, which is very cool, which I've been trying to get a hold of. That's been my goal lately. I have not. But the experimental collection is different bourbons and with bourbons that they put in different types of barrels. There are currently 30,000 experimental barrels of whiskey aging in the warehouse. Each of the barrels has its unique characteristics and experimental changes to the mash bill, type of wood, barrel toast, and more. So they're basically experimenting to see if they can come up with a different brand. And then they also do release bottles at the distillery from time to time. All right, Wade Spendlove. I'm new to neat bourbon and I love E.H. Taylor. Okay, excellent. E.H. Taylor. I started out, Wade, by drinking E.H. Taylor on the rocks. I would sip it a little bit and then put it on the rocks. That's how I started out. So that is an excellent starting point. If you, the other one I could say, if you could get a hold of, when you're talking about Buffalo Trace, you could get a hold of the Weller. Anything from the Weller line is spectacular. And then the benchmark aspect of this, they have a brand of single barrels, full proofs, top shelves, and stuff like that. Check that out also if you can. Those are a little bit more readily available. And then when you're talking about Eagle Rare also. Now, Eagle Rare isn't one of my favorites. I'm not huge on that mash bill. And when we're talking about it, it's kind of like everybody's tastes are their own. You like E.H. Taylor, then you could stick. The other one is pull out. If you could get the version of Stag, and then also I'm not a huge fan of Blanton's, but everybody on the planet that is drinking, I've had Blanton's. So once you've had it, you kind of understand. We'll go over the marketing on that one a little bit later. Now, the Single Oak Project is that's something that I haven't tasted yet, and I'd love to, but they basically it all started to go into select American oak trees that differed according to the number of growth rings per inch and growing location. Each tree was then cut into two parts, top and bottom, yielding 192 unique tree sections. A single barrel was constructed from each section. Prior to construction, the stave seasonings were varied. So they basically went through and went crazy, like Greg Schneider of Chicken Cock that he's been doing, to make the barrels to see what happens with them. So they have out of the 192 bottles they produced, there was 1,396 taste combinations. None of the 192 bottles in complete sets are exactly alike. The Single Oak Project is undoubtedly the most extensive bourbon experiment ever undertaking. So you got that. Then you got E.H. Taylor Jr., which you've got their small batch, you've got their single barrel, the barrel proof, the straight rye, the old fashioned sour mix. You have, I'd like to try that one, that's for sure. Warehouse C Tornado, cured oak, seasoned wood, 4-grain amaranth, 18-year marriage, and Warehouse C bourbon. So this is what all their different selections are. It's in itself a whiskey lover's dream to try and collect all the different expressions of E.H. Taylor. So it comes from Warehouse C. They know especially where they make it. The small batch comes out. They're finally getting small batch on the shelves more and more. So check out small batch if you can. I'm going to be shooting for a single barrel real soon. I've never obtained a barrel proof, and I just tasted it for the first time was able to taste barrel proof. Now, the 4-grain I was able to taste many times through Super Nash, so check that out. Okay. I know where you got one of my favorite distilleries that you know, Tiny. Yes, it's Super Nash is watching now, and that was a comment. Then what we're looking at after the Taylor, let's see, you got Van Winkle, and Van Winkle comes. It's the most sought after bourbon on the planet. It's insane. I've had the old Rip Van Winkle 10-year. I've had the Van Winkle Special Reserve. I've never tasted the 13-year rye. I've had the 15, courtesy of Super Nash, and then the Pappy Van Winkle 20 and 23 years. Right now, I have a sample of the current 12-year, so we're excited about that. That's an upcoming thing. But this easily, the Van Winkle line, and I don't have one up here. I have an empty bottle, but it's got lights in it, and I wasn't. But the Van Winkle line is by far the most sought after bourbon there is. I mean, honestly, that's what everybody who gets into bourbon is looking for. You got a chance to taste it, taste it. You got a chance to pick up a bottle, pick up a bottle. The prices are insane, so that's one of the reasons that keeps us out of the Van Winkle. You're talking $1,200, $1,500 on secondary, and it's a rough. Now, Ohio has a lottery, so I play that lottery, and I pray at one point. I love the logo. The logo is fantastic. It's got a picture. When you're talking about the 15, 20, and 23, it's got a picture of Pappy, and he's smoking a cigar. I mean, I just love the bottle. It's great. So enough said. Now there's George T. Stagg, which I've got. This this is part of the antique collection, and this is a fantastic bottle. It's barrel proof, and it's part of it. And there's no bad expression of the Stagg. Just delicious. Then you take Sazerac Rye. This is their rye. That's whatever. It at one point was a little bit hard to come by, but it's out there. And as far as the rye goes, it's pretty good. Oh, really? So there we go. We're going to have to do it that way, huh? How come dropping things? That's what I love to do, is drop things. Cancel that. All right. So then, yeah, it's like when you're this is. So the way that as I keep going through this, you got your Blanton's single barrel. Listen to what Blanton's has. What they got, that's the single barrel, but they've got right from the barrel. They've got gold. They've got, there's so many different Blantons out there. And then you got Elmer T. Lee, which is right here, single barrel. That was courtesy of Super Nash. And then that's a delicious, this is I believe, 86 proof, and it's a really good drinker. Then you have the Weller line. You've got, on the Weller line, here we go. Let's just go here. You've got Antique, Full Proof, Special Reserve. Well, Special Reserve is their green label, and that's the cheapest, and that's like their staple. That's what you use for mixers, and it's, it's your standard bourbon blend. Then you've got your Weller Antique, your Full Proof, the 12-year CYPB, create your perfect bourbon, Weller Single Barrel, and the William LaRue Weller, which I was able to have for the first time, which is part of the antique collection. And so you're kind of getting this. Old Charter, Benchmark, Ancient Age, the White Dog. You could buy their White Dog, their wheated version of White Dog. They're different. They're 1 and 2 mash bills. Actually, Super Nash was able to take that, put that in a barrel, and age it, make some damn good whiskey. And then you got your Bourbon Cream, the kosher whiskeys, and then Freddy's. So that's their line. So what I wanted to talk about when it comes to the line, and I wanted to do this pretty quick, but what they've done at Buffalo Trace, and it's part of this whiskey boom. All the other distilleries, and then also Jim Beam participating in this part of the boom, and also Wild Turkey. When you're talking about it, they've created for a generation that collected baseball cards, another generation that collected Pokemon cards. These are the collecting aspect. So when I was growing up, yes, there was baseball cards. I got into that heavily. But there was also the fad of beer can collecting. People would go around and collect all the different beer cans, and you would have books on all the different beers. Right now, a beer can collection would be insane. I don't even think you could do it with all the IPAs and the locals and the local breweries and all the restaurant breweries and how many breweries out there. A beer can collection would be pretty insane. I don't think you could fit it in a room. So that's one thing. But back then in the 70s when people were collecting, it was when Jimmy Carter's brother, he had a Billy beer. That was part of the collection. But you had all these different things. And people like to collect things because it causes nostalgia. Well, this group of whiskeys not only are fantastic, the whiskey itself has time. They know they've been doing this consistently in this with those warehouses for over 100 years. They know the sweet spots. This is why what Harlan is doing with doubling the amount that they can make by doubling that still, making another one exactly like it right next to it, and then producing whiskey, and then also in his plans, and I asked him specifically, how are you going to make more Blantons? And because Blanton's comes from the metal warehouses in specific areas. And he's like, we intend to. We molecularly can look at the whiskey. We can build metal rickhouses and we can heat them with steam or cool them or whatnot. So the whiskey is going to be aging similar. They're going to be looking at it and they are going to they put it online just now. So in 5, 6, 7 years from now, this stuff is going to be, and they're going to have they're going to be able to meet the demand through their warehouses and their whiskey production. So that's really a cool thing that I find, what's happening down there as far as their expansion. So you got Harlan pretty much doing a really good job. I'm going to drink right now the Weller Foolproof. Weller Foolproof is one of I like the Weller brand. I like the Buffalo Trace brand. Going down we are working on trying to get back for an in-person podcast because initially I had Harlan scheduled for in person, and then we eventually had to do it because of the pandemic. We ended up having to do it virtual through Zoom. But that podcast was fantastic. Harlan is a great guy. One of the things there was some stories that Greg Schneider knew of Harlan, and they all the distilleries, Wild Turkey, Jim Beam used to get together and do, the distilleries and the workers used to get together for picnics and competitions. And one of the competitions, this was just a story that Greg told me about Harlan, is when Harlan was young, he was in a canoe race with Elmer T. Lee. Now, Elmer was at the end of his career. This is about, I believe, 2000, he said, and they were in this canoe race. And at one point, things were going as they were going, and things were happening. The canoe flipped. And Harlan was freaking out as a young man because he wasn't sure what happened to Elmer when it flipped. But they were able to get Elmer out of the water safely. But it was just, those are the kind of stories you hear in the industry when you're part of, when you get to meet the people that are making the bourbon and who are making it now, and who, to talk with Fred No Sr., talk with Freddie, talk with Greg Schneider, and then also talk with Alan Bishop and Harlan, talk with Harlan. There's, we've Jade Peterson at Kentucky Artesian Distillery. I mean, Aaron Harris at Green River. I mean, we get to talk to all these different distillers. And it's something where not only is history being made, but history is being preserved. And I think that's where Buffalo Trace and Sazerac have marketed and got us some superior products. There's no doubt. But created the collecting frenzy. I remember in 3rd grade, Wacky Packages were out. They were in their first season, or their first series, and there was unobtainable Wacky Packages. I bought so many packs of Wacky Packages to get the specific 2 Wacky Packages that eventually I ended up with, and it's the same thing. My favorite, where it comes down to, is when you're talking about Blanton's. Blanton's is a single barrel. So one thing that anybody will know is that when you have a single barrel, each barrel is individual. There's no blending or mixing. You're picking the barrels based off of what's in that barrel, and it's going to go into the bottle. Then you're also going to, with Blanton's, take it down, I believe, to 93 proof. All the Blanton's are down to 93 proof. So once it's down to 93 proof, now it's got the flavor. It was picked based off of its proof in the barrel. It's proof down to 93, bottled, and put out there. Now, what you'll find with Blanton's is, and this is within the industry, most people who know, Blanton's is generally average good bourbon. It's, but because it's a single barrel, there are some that are below average, and there are some that are exceptional. So if you buy your first bottle of Blanton's, you're like, that wasn't that great, you're going to be ripping on Blanton's on all the formats saying Blanton's isn't that great. But if you buy your first bottle of Blanton's and it's pretty damn good, you've got a topper of part of the stage, which spells out the 8 stages in Blanton's. And now you go for your second bottle. Now your second bottle isn't as good as your first bottle, but you got another topper. They've got you caught to be able to get all 8 toppers, and knowing that some are better than others. It's a marketing strategy of genius for especially my generation and then my son's generation, because they collected things too. So now you're on the hunt. You want all stages. And then if you get all 8 of them, you can look behind me, but there is, you can't really see it right now because I've got all the bottles, but there is, they put on a stave with the gold Blanton's label right on the front of that stave. They mount all 8 stages, and you just send them in, and they ship it back. They'll ship it back to you on the stave. It's just that's like winning the autographed baseball card when you're doing the packs. I mean, it's just the coolest thing. So you got that going for it. And then you've got the other lines. When you're talking about Weller, CYPB, that creates your own perfect bourbon. That is a mash bill created every single year that people who can go on the website, they create their perfect bourbon, and they basically take everybody who did it and get the mash bill, the wheated mash bill for that year's create your own perfect bourbon, your CYPB, your perfect bourbon. Then you're talking about, you got the Elmer T. Lee, which is a mellow, really good bourbon named after, so you got Blanton's named after Albert Blanton. You got Elmer T. Lee. You got George T. Stagg from, the guy who bought it from E.H. Taylor, and you got E.H. Taylor. Now, E.H. Taylor is the same thing as Blanton's, where you get the different you're collecting the topper. The single barrels are all different, but they're pretty much the same level. This takes you to different levels at barrel proof. The price goes up accordingly, but in when you're talking about E.H. Taylor and the other different releases, the small batch is more obtainable. The barrel proof has a little bit of obtainability, but when you're talking about the 18-year marriage and you're talking about Warehouse C and the Tornado batch. Those are on a different level of actually obtaining. The Warehouse C was in a lottery this year. Oh, we didn't get one. Then you got the Eagle Rare, which is that mash bill, like I said, but once again, when it goes across, then you got the Stag, which is George T. Stag, but then you got Stag, which used to be Stag Junior, but the Junior was released this year. This is a barrel strength, delicious bourbon, which also is obtainable. So you've got the whole line. Then you got your benchmarks. So they basically have you looking out for their product, and the product isn't readily available on the shelf. It's not like you can just go out there and purchase these. You have to be looking all the time. You have to be, in some cases, the right place at the right time. And then also you have to, as any other thing, you have to be willing to open up your pocketbook if you're going to be trying to find some of the other ones. But what I like to do, and this is my thing, is my goal is, especially as a podcaster, I can't drink all this. I got so much, and I can drink, I can share with people, and I can do things, but if I can taste it, one of the coolest things right now is if they've been coming out with some of them 375 milliliter bottles. That's the greatest for me, because I want a 375 milliliter bottle over a 750 milliliter bottle, because I can't keep revisiting the 750 milliliter myself enough, because if I did, I would be an alcoholic. So that's kind of how that works right there. So anyways, we're getting near the end. I'd like to thank you all for joining me for this Buffalo Trace. We gave you a little bit of history. We gave you what they're doing as far as expansion. We gave you what to do when you're down there, how cool it is. The collectability went through the lines. I hope you enjoyed this podcast of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, because seriously, when it comes, what the line and what they're doing at Buffalo Trace, they are doing it. Oh, the last thing I want to say is, when you go to Kentucky, everybody, especially they are not on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, but their tours and their tastings are free. You just have to sign up for them. So the tours and tastings are free. So that is really a plus, that when you go down there, now the way they do it is they're not part of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and that costs some money to be on. When you go to other distilleries, you're going to pay a minimal amount for the tasting and the tour. So know that they're free. So that's why you want to get on that website on the dates we talked about. Get on there 9 a.m. in the morning when they do it. Hit your date that you've got scheduled and book that tour. All right. So anyways, that brings us to thank you everybody for watching. Really appreciate it. I'm Tiny of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Remember, www.scotchybourbonboys.com. Check us out for everything Scotchy Bourbon Boys. We got t-shirts. We got Glencairns. I'm going to get a sip here. So good. I love that full proof. So then, also, check us out on all the major podcast formats. We are also on social media: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. I think that's it. And then also, please listen to us on all the major podcast formats. And please listen, like, subscribe, leave good feedback. And remember, good bourbon equals good times, good friends, and go out and live your life dangerously. Little Steve-O's going to take us out.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you, I tell you, I tell you we must die.
All right, I have stopped recording. I'm going to go back on to YouTube or Facebook. Check that baby out. I see a couple of you guys are still watching. Let me quick get this going. All right, what do we got? We got Matt checking in. Thanks for checking in, Matt. Good to see you. And then let me just quick file. Publish to uploading. We are gonna get this. I gotta actually. All right. There we go. Save. All right. We're building that episode. If anybody out there have any questions? Thank you for watching on YouTube. I'm going to take us off live on YouTube really quick. Thanks so much. Looks like we actually had our first commentators and listeners. So it looks like